Chapter 1, Back to the Edge. The road narrowed the closer she got to the sea. No more painted lines, no street lights, just gravel, salt air, and the sound of gulls circling like ghosts overhead. Clara gripped the steering wheel tighter. She hadn't been back here in 23 years. Her mother never spoke of the house. Only once, in a fit of wine-fueled sadness, did she mutter, "That house? It'll swallow you whole if you let it." Clara remembered blinking at her, confused. Now she understood. The house stood like a secret, half swallowed by the wild coast. Salt-stained shingles, one window shutter hanging loose, porch warped like tired bones. She parked and stepped out. Wind slapped her coat open, and for a moment she just stood there, letting it rush through her, like it might tear away the parts of her she didn't want anymore. Divorce, death, everything broken and unsaid. The keys. The old brass key turned with a groan. The door opened slow, reluctant, like the house wasn't sure it wanted her back. Dust curled in the golden light. She coughed, set her bag down just inside the doorway, and walked in like a stranger, because that's what she was. The only thing she remembered clearly were the kitchen tiles, cracked pale blue, and the window over the sink facing the sea. That view was still there, infinite water, unanswered questions. The letter. On the kitchen table lay a single envelope, yellowed with time. No stamp. Just her name and her mother's handwriting. Clara, she hesitated, heart already tightening, then opened it. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. And you came back, you always had a harder heart than me. Or maybe you were just braver. This house is yours now. If you want it, burn it if you don't. But if you stay, be prepared to face things you've buried deeper than I ever did. This place remembers, and so will you." M. Clara folded the letter slowly. The silence in the room felt different now, like it was listening. The neighbor. She spent the next hour opening windows, coughing through cobwebs, peeling sheets off furniture. It was past sunset when she stepped outside to drag the trash bin to the curb, and nearly jumped when a man's voice broke the quiet. Didn't think anyone'd ever come back to that place. Clara turned. He stood near the edge of the property line. Tall, broad-shouldered, faded navy peacoat, weathered hands, beard salt and pepper like the waves crashing behind him. He wasn't smiling, just observing. "Who are you?" she asked, squinting through the dim. "Theo Ward, lived next door, about 50 yards east, past the trees." She remembered now, barely, a boy with a scraped knee and a shy smile from long ago. But this wasn't a boy. This was a man who looked like the ocean had kept him. "Clara Delmont. I know." A pause. "Your mother hated my father. My mother hated everyone." He chuckled once, not cruel, just dry, then tipped his head toward the house. "Storm's coming. That place leaks like a sieve. You'll want to check the back room." And without waiting, he turned and disappeared down the dark path toward the sea. The leak. It took an hour to find the source. The back guest room, the one with the floral wallpaper her mother always despised, was soaked. Water streaked down the corner wall, ceiling bowed, paint bubbling like blisters. She grabbed towels, buckets, swore under her breath. Everything about this place was rotting, falling apart, just like her. The storm rain came hard that night. Winds howled like wolves through the cracks. Clara lay awake in her childhood bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried since the funeral. Not even when Paul left. "You're not present anymore," he said. "You're just surviving." He wasn't wrong. But she didn't miss him. She missed feeling mourning. She woke to seagulls and the distant clang of boat rigging. The ocean was silver. She made coffee, black and bitter, then stepped outside barefoot to stand on the porch. And there he was, Theo, leaning on the fence between their properties. Same coat, same unreadable eyes. Survived the night? Barely. You'll need help fixing that roof. Clara raised an eyebrow. "You offering?" Didn't say that, but then, a flicker of something in his gaze. "But I might be, if you make decent coffee." She held up the mug, He walked over, took it from her hands, sipped. Not bad. She looked at him. Why help me? Theo shrugged. Maybe I like broken things that don't pretend to be whole. Clara's breath caught. Then she said quietly, then you'll love this house. Maybe, he said. We'll see if it loves you back. Chapter 2, The Man Behind the Door. The attic door had always stuck. Clara stood beneath it with a broom, nudging the hatch open. Dust rained down. The wooden stairs groaned as she pulled them loose. Why are you doing this today? She muttered. Because she couldn't stand the stillness. Because it was too soon to call a roofer. Because Theo had disappeared again without saying when he'd return. And because the house felt like it wanted her to look. The attic. It was dim and narrow, smelling of cedar and thyme. Boxes, crates, old trunks with brass latches. She crouched low, running her hand along a dusty shelf, until her fingers brushed a thin, flat envelope wedged behind a crate. It had no stamp, just 2 initials, CD. She froze. It wasn't her mother's handwriting. It was older, loopier. She opened it carefully, the paper nearly cracking in her hands. Clara, if you're reading this, your mother never forgave me. I don't blame her. I just hope you won't hate this house because of the love it once held, or the love it cost. I wanted to stay. But war takes more than bodies. It takes decisions. I made mine. There are more letters. If you want to know who I was to her, and who she was before grief swallowed her, keep looking. The past isn't gone. It's just sleeping in the walls. Clara sat back. The wind creaked through the beams above her. Theo returns. By mid-afternoon, Clara was covered in attic dust and still thinking about the letter when she heard footsteps on the gravel outside. She peeked through the kitchen window. Theo was back, jacket over one shoulder, a wooden toolbox in hand. Told you I'd help with the leak, he said casually when she opened the door. You just didn't say when. I don't work on a schedule. I work on instinct. She stepped aside. Then your instincts finally caught up. Roof work. He climbed up without ceremony, moving with the kind of ease only someone used to danger could possess. She stayed below, handing him tools, trying not to stare too long at the way his shirt pulled at his shoulders. You served, didn't you? She asked finally. He paused. I did. Navy? Captain. Clara nodded. Explains the silences. He looked down at her, his face unreadable. Explains the scars too. She didn't ask where they were. He didn't offer, but for the first time, the space between them wasn't prickly, just delicate. A shared past. Later, he came down, wiped his hands on a rag, and sat on the porch rail. Your mother used to sit here, same spot, every Sunday. I don't remember that. She read aloud sometimes. Her voice carried. He looked at her again. She wasn't always like how she ended. Clara blinked. The honesty caught her off guard. No, she whispered, I guess none of us are. The photograph. That evening, Clara dug through the attic again. She found a faded photograph. 2 people, mid-20s, standing beside the sea. The woman was her mother. Younger, smiling, actually smiling. The man beside her wore a naval uniform. He looked like Theo. But it couldn't be Theo. Could it? She turned the photo over. In faint pencil, it read, June 1984. J+M. Clara stared. That was 10 years before she was born. Nightfall. She sat by the fireplace that night, the photo in one hand, the letter in the other. Who was J? Could this man have been the love her mother never named? And why did Theo look so much like him? The door creaked in the wind. The house felt like it was watching her. Chapter 3, Storm Glass. The wind woke her at 3:12 a.m. Not just the wind, the house. It creaked like it remembered something painful. Clara sat up, heart racing. The photograph lay on the nightstand. The man beside her mother, Jay, with the same eyes, jaw, and silence as Theo. She couldn't sleep again. Instead, she wrapped herself in her mother's old cardigan, crept downstairs, and poured herself a glass of red wine. The fire had long since gone out. She sat by the hearth anyway, cold glass in hand, staring into the dark. morning clarity. The next morning came gray and wet. Fog drifted from the sea like a ghost crawling home. Theo showed up without warning, again. This time with a roll of tarp and a heavy-lidded stare. "Roof's holding," he said, leaning against the porch rail. Barely. He eyed her. "Did you sleep?" Clara shook her head. "Not much." "Something wrong?" She hesitated, then walked inside, came back with the photo and held it out. "Do you know him?" He didn't even glance at it. "No, you didn't look. Didn't need to. You look like him." Theo took a breath, then finally looked at the photo, held it, studied it. "That's James Ward," he said. "My father." Clara's stomach dropped, shared silence. She sat down on the steps, heart fluttering like a trapped thing. "My mother never told me his name," she said. "He never told me about her. And yet," she gestured at the photo, "they look like they were the only ones in the world." Theo nodded, then said nothing. Not even when she stood, took the photo gently from his hand and walked inside. The storm rolls in. The first clap of thunder came late that afternoon. Clara was in the attic again, searching, hoping for more letters. What she found was stranger. A glass sphere the size of a grapefruit, wrapped in linen. Inside, frozen like a fragile world, were tiny feathers, grains of sand, and what looked like salt crystals. A storm glass. She remembered her grandmother once saying they used to predict weather with them in the old days, back when hearts were steadier than satellites. She set it on the windowsill. Watched the clouds blur in its curve. Theo at the door. By evening the storm was roaring. Rain hammered the windows. Wind screamed down the chimney. And then, a knock. She opened the door to find Theo soaked, windblown, hair stuck to his forehead. "My power's out," he said. "And I think your attic's about to fly off. Come in." She didn't hesitate. He stepped over the threshold slowly, like he hadn't crossed into someone else's warmth in years. Shelter. Clara brought him towels, tea, a dry shirt she found upstairs. It might have been her father's once, but she didn't want to think about that. He changed behind the bathroom door. When he came out, she said, "Your father wrote to my mother." Theo's eyes narrowed slightly. "When?" "Before I was born." "What did he say?" "That he left her, that he made a choice." "That sounds like him." "Did he ever tell you why?" "He didn't tell me anything." The storm pounded harder. Clara looked toward the fireplace, then back at him. "Stay tonight." She hadn't planned to say it, but it left her mouth before doubt could catch it. Theo didn't blink. "All right." "Firelight?" Later, they sat in front of the fire she managed to relight. Theo stared into it like it held secrets. "He left when I was 10, he said. Took the sea instead of us." She never stopped waiting for him. Then maybe they were both ghosts by the end. A long pause. "Then I'm not him," Theo added, quiet, firm. "I didn't say you were, but you're wondering." Clara looked at him. "I don't wonder who you are, Theo. I wonder who you were before the world got to you." He blinked, like she'd struck something inside him he wasn't ready to name. The storm breaks. That night, the roof didn't leak. The power didn't fail. The house didn't fall apart. But something inside her did. As they sat in silence, their knees just barely touching, Clara realized she hadn't felt safe beside anyone in years. Not since her mother fell ill. Not since Paul stopped trying. Not since she stopped believing she deserved warmth. But now, here, with this storm outside and this man inside, and this house that remembered everything, something settled. Not finished, not fixed, just settled. Chapter 4, Names in the Floorboards. The next morning came quiet. No rain, no wind, only the soft hiss of ocean mist against the glass. Clara woke to the scent of coffee. She blinked, sat up, and remembered. Theo stayed. The bedroom door was cracked open. She followed the smell to the kitchen. Theo stood barefoot, shirt slightly wrinkled, mug in hand. "You had the good beans," he said simply, not turning. She leaned against the doorframe. "So you broke into my cabinet? You invited me in. That counts for something." She smiled, and he smiled back, barely, just a flicker. But it was enough, under the floor. Later, after Theo left for town, need nails, and sanity, Clara climbed into the guest bedroom. The storm hadn't touched it, but something called her to the floor. A memory, a feeling, a pressure in the chest she couldn't name. She pulled back the rug, ran her hand over the boards until she felt it, one plank looser than the others. She wedged it up with a screwdriver. Dust flew, wood creaked, and beneath it, wrapped in linen and bound with twine, was a bundle of letters, 37 of them, tied together like a secret love song. The first letter. She opened one at random. The handwriting was the same as the attic letter. J, October 3rd, 1983. Margot, the sea is calm tonight, but I'm not. I keep thinking of your laugh, the kind that starts in your chest and ends in your eyes. God, how I miss that. I wish I had stayed. I wish I had fought harder. But war doesn't let you be soft, and I was too young to know how to be anything else. If I come back, will you still have me? James Clara sat very still. Her mother had once loved someone deeply, softly, bravely, and somewhere along the line she buried it, hid it under rugs in silence. Clara wasn't sure what shook her more, the letters or the realization that she didn't know her mother at all. Theo's return. He knocked before entering this time. She opened the door slowly. Find anything? Clara nodded. Letters. Yours. Your father's. To my mother. He said nothing. Just walked in, looked at her, waited. So she read aloud. Just one letter. A short one. About the first time her mother let James touch her hand in public. When she finished, Theo was staring at the floor. They were real, he said. I think so. Then why did he leave? Clara shook her head. Because people do. A beat passed. Did she write back, he asked. I don't know yet. Maybe you should find out. The boat. That afternoon, Theo asked her to walk with him. Down to the cove, past the dock, to a place hidden by pine and fog. There sat a small white sailboat, weathered but sturdy. Yours? She asked. Built it after I came home. From the war? From the part of me that didn't survive it. She turned to him. He didn't look away. It's easier on the water, he said. There's no judgment, just current. You think you're broken, she said softly. No, I know I am. I just learned how to sail around it. She stepped closer. And what if someone wanted to sail with you? His voice caught. Then I'd have to learn how to let them. A soft yes. Back at the house, as twilight slid across the sky, Clara stood on the porch and asked, Dinner tomorrow? You asking? I think I am. Theo hesitated. Then, yeah, all right. He didn't say more, didn't need to. Because when he looked at her, the silence said, yes, I want this too. I just don't know how to hold it yet. Chapter 5, Paper and Ash. It rained again that morning. Not heavy, not loud, just a soft, constant drizzle, like the sky was remembering something it hadn't said out loud in a while. Clara sat at the kitchen table, the letters spread out in front of her. They smelled like cedar, ocean salt, and the past. She read each one slowly, let the ache in them settle into her ribs. Her mother had been in love, fully, desperately, and she had lost it to silence, until the very last envelope. This one was different. Not yellowed, not folded, and it wasn't from James. It was to him. James, I waited. I hated you for leaving, then hated myself for waiting, and then I hated the world for not making space for the two of us to live in the same room. But here's the part you never gave me credit for. I still loved you, through every bitter word, every winter without your voice, every lie. I told our daughter to make her stop asking. I wish I'd sent this. But I'm too proud, too scared. And maybe I don't want you to know you still win, or still. If you ever find your way back to this shore, I'm here. Margot Clara folded the letter, breathless. It had never been mailed. It was sealed and placed at the very bottom of the box, like her mother wanted to send it but couldn't. And suddenly, Clara felt like she was holding her mother's heart, still warm, still bruised, still waiting. Dinner. Theo arrived just before 6. He brought wine, deep red, older than she expected. Clara had made simple pasta, rosemary bread, and salad from the tiny herb garden she'd found near the back fence. "I didn't know you could cook," he said as she handed him a plate. "I didn't know I could either." "Risky first date." She paused. "Is this a date?" "Depends." "On what?" "On whether you're asking me to stay after." Silence. Then Clara looked him in the eye. "I'm not asking. I'm just not locking the door behind you." He smiled softly. That smile, quiet and rare, made something inside her shift. After dinner, they sat in the living room, firelight dancing across the floor. Clara handed him the unsent letter. He read it slowly, his thumb brushing the corner of the page. "She loved him," he said quietly. "She never stopped, and he didn't deserve it." Clara blinked. "He was your father." Theo looked up, eyes dark and steady. "That's not an excuse." He folded the paper and handed it back. "But maybe it's a warning." "Against what?" "Leaving when you should stay." A story shared. The wind outside rattled the windows. Clara sipped her wine. Theo's voice came low. "There was a kid in my unit. Fresh out of academy, young, thought he was bulletproof. What happened? He wasn't..." Clara set her glass down gently. Theo continued, "We were moving fast. Too fast. Wrong coordinates. Fog rolled in. We lost visibility. Theo, it was my call. And he didn't make it back. He didn't cry. He didn't raise his voice. But his hands, those strong, capable hands, trembled slightly. I came back. He didn't. And you've been punishing yourself ever since. Not just me," he said. "Everyone who tries to get close." Clara looked at him. Not with pity, but with recognition. "I know that guilt. Not from war, but from life. Yeah? I stopped calling my mother during her last year. I said I was busy with work. Really, I was just angry." Theo's gaze softened. "You regret it?" "Every day." He nodded. "Then maybe we're not so different. Maybe not. Or maybe we're both just people learning how to come back." A quiet night. He didn't kiss her that night, but when she turned off the lamp and slipped into bed, he lay beside her. Not touching, just there. The kind of presence that didn't ask for anything, only offered. And as she closed her eyes, Clara thought, this is what healing feels like. Not loud, not sudden, just steady. Chapter 6. What the Sea Keeps. The fog was thick that morning, the kind that turned the world to watercolor. Clara stood at the window, mug in hand, watching waves brush the rocky shore like breath. Theo was already gone. He left early, as he often did, saying little. But this time, he left a note. "Doc needs checking. High tide last night. Might have shifted some of the old supports. Back by noon." She held the paper longer than necessary, not because of the words, but because of what they meant. He was letting her in, slowly, cautiously, like someone who'd forgotten what sharing felt like. The dock. By the time she reached the dock path, the fog had begun to lift. Theo was crouched near the water's edge, sleeves rolled, hands covered in mud and seaweed. "Lose something?" she called out. He looked over his shoulder, smirked, found something. She stepped down the wooden slats until she was beside him. Between two rotting beams was an old iron box, sea-worn, heavy, padlocked shut. "How long's that been there?" she asked. "Don't know, but it didn't wash in. It was placed." Clara crouched. The initials on the lid were barely legible through the rust. "J.W. your father," she whispered. Theo nodded. He must have hidden it, before or after she stopped hearing from him. We're about to find out. The box. Back at the house, they dried the box and forced the lock open with a chisel and a flathead screwdriver. It clicked after a moment, like it had been waiting to give up its secrets. Inside, a weathered leather journal, 2 pressed wildflowers, a compass engraved with the word return, a folded letter unopened, and an old gold ring. Clara picked up the letter. It was addressed to MD, her mother. "This was never sent," she said. Theo held up the journal. Maybe the answers are here. The journal. They read it together by the fire, one page at a time. James wrote in clipped but vivid lines. Stories of the ship, dreams of Margot, guilt about the things he could not undo. May 3rd, 1985, sometimes I still feel the weight of her hand on my shoulder. God help me, I miss her laughter more than oxygen. July 9th, if I return, will I be a stranger? A ghost in my own story? August 21st, buried the box by the dock. Just in case I don't get to tell her with my voice. Let the sea carry it if I fail. Clara closed the journal. He was coming back. Theo nodded, quiet, but he didn't. Do you think he died at sea? Maybe. Or maybe he changed his mind. Theo looked away. I've done that too many times to judge. A knock at the door. That evening, just before sunset, someone knocked. Clara opened the door to find a small woman in her late 70s, holding a cane and wearing a sea green raincoat. You're Margot's daughter, she said, not asking. Yes. My name is Agnes Bell. I was your grandmother's neighbor. I knew your mother, and him. Clara blinked. James? Agnes nodded. He was more than a sailor, more than a secret. She stepped inside slowly. There's something I think you should know about the child your mother lost before you were born. Clara's breath caught. What child? Theo, sitting near the fireplace, straightened. Your mother was going to marry James, Agnes said softly, before the war. Before the letter that never came. What happened? The child didn't make it. The grief drove them apart. Not the war. Not duty. Loss. Real, brutal, bone-deep loss. Clara felt dizzy. The unsent letter, the ring, the journal. It all painted a story of love interrupted not by betrayal, but by pain. She never told me, Clara whispered. Some things hurt too much to name, Agnes said gently. Later that night, Theo didn't speak for a long time after Agnes left. Neither did Clara. They sat on the floor beside the open box, the fire crackling quietly. Do you still think he ran away? Clara asked. Theo shook his head. No, I think he broke, like we all do. She looked at him. Do you think we have to stay broken? Theo turned toward her, his expression raw and honest. Not if we let someone see the cracks. She reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. Chapter 7. Letters Never Sent. The next morning, Clara sat at the kitchen table with an empty sheet of paper. No one had asked her to write. No one was waiting for her words. But after Agnes left and the storm passed, something in her felt restless. Unearthed, she didn't write to Theo, or her mother, or James. She wrote to herself. Dear Clara, I'm proud of you for coming back. I know it hurt. I know you didn't want to open that door. To this house, to these memories, to your own heart. But you did. You walked in anyway. And look what you found. A man who listens more with his eyes than his mouth. A house that held more love than anyone remembered. And a version of yourself that's finally beginning to believe she deserves to heal. Don't run. Not again. Don't bury this like she did. Write it down, say it out loud, let it be real. You are allowed to begin again. Me, she read it once, twice. Then folded the page, tucked it inside her journal, and left it there. Not for anyone else, just in case she ever forgot again. Theo's truth. Later, they sat together on the porch, legs stretched out, mugs in hand. The sea was unusually calm, the tide still, as if holding its breath. Can I ask you something? Clara said, voice low. Theo didn't flinch. You can ask. I can choose not to answer. The woman you lost. What happened? He set his mug down. Silence stretched between them like a thread waiting to snap. Then finally her name was Elise. She was a combat medic, brilliant, stubborn, smelled like ginger tea and war paint. He smiled, faint and bittersweet. She saved my life once. More than once, probably. Clara nodded, watching him carefully. Did you love her? Yes. A long breath. Did she love you back? Yes. Then why aren't you with her? Theo looked out at the water. She didn't make it home. Clara's heart clenched. It was a bad call, he continued. Not mine. But I was in the room. I didn't fight it hard enough. She volunteered for the mission. She said I shouldn't stop her from doing what she was trained to do. And you didn't. No. I watched her walk away. He swallowed. She never came back. They sat in silence. Then Clara reached over, laced her fingers gently through his. He didn't pull away. I'm not trying to replace her, she said. And I'm not asking you to fix me. Good, Clara whispered. Because we both know that's not how this works. The music box. That evening, Clara wandered the attic again. She wasn't searching, not really. But her hand brushed a small velvet box tucked behind a row of old books. Inside, a delicate silver music box. When she turned the key, it played a melody she didn't recognize. Sad and lilting, like a lullaby whispered across time. Inside the lid, in faint engraving for the child we almost had, Clara sat down, holding it to her chest. Her mother hadn't forgotten. She had simply tucked the grief into the cracks. Not erased, just hidden, like everyone else in this house. A walk in the dark. That night, she and Theo walked the bluff in silence. Stars blinked above. The wind was soft. She stopped and turned to him. Do you want to keep running? He shook his head slowly. No. Then stay. I'm already here. Not just in this town. Not just on this porch. I know what you mean, he said. Clara took his hand. We don't need to name it yet, she said. We don't need to make promises, but we need to stop pretending it doesn't matter. He pulled her gently toward him, and this time when he kissed her, it wasn't rushed or hungry. It was deliberate, like two people slowly returning to the world, together. Chapter 8, Tides That Remember. The window in the upstairs study had been cracked since Clara arrived. She hadn't dared touch it. It looked out over the cliffs, her father's favorite view, she remembered. Or maybe that was something she'd made up to comfort herself. Either way, it had stayed broken. Until now. Glass and salt. Theo stood in the study, sleeves rolled, toolkit beside him, rain jacket tossed across the old armchair. You don't have to fix everything, Clara said softly from the doorway. He looked over his shoulder, half grinning. This one's for me. She crossed her arms, watching him pry out the damaged glass with careful hands. You good with your hands? She said teasingly. Depends who you ask. I just did. He smirked, then grew quiet. This house, it's strange, he said. It breathes, remembers, like it's watching. Or waiting. She stepped beside him. Do you believe in ghosts? He paused, gaze on the jagged edge of the glass. I believe in grief. That's close enough. A story unearthed. They sat in the parlor, sun slanting across the floor. Henry sipped tea slowly, like someone used to long silences. Your mother used to bring you over on rainy days, he said. You'd crawl under the piano, said it sounded like thunder when she played. Clara blinked. I don't remember that. Most kids don't. But I do. He pulled something from his coat, a photograph, black and white, faded. Clara, maybe 4 years old, clinging to her mother's leg. Behind them, on the porch, stood a tall man in uniform, James Ward. He came back once, Henry said. For a night. Clara stared. What? You were maybe 5. I remember because you'd drawn chalk hearts all over the porch floor. And he sat there with you, quiet, watching. Her hands trembled. She told me he never came back. She lied, Henry said gently. But not to hurt you, maybe to protect herself, maybe to rewrite the ending she couldn't live with. Clara ran a finger over the photo, the man in the background, his hand resting just behind her shoulder. He was real, she whispered, more than you know. After Henry left, Clara stood in the yard, the photo in hand. The porch floor was long since repainted, the chalk hearts gone. But she could feel it now, a memory unearthed. Theo stepped beside her. You okay? He came back, she said. He sat right there, watched me draw hearts. I must have looked up at him and never known who he really was. But he knew you. Clara nodded. All this time I thought he left and never looked back. But maybe he did. and my mother just couldn't let herself believe it was enough. The window restored. That evening, the new glass was in. Theo stood back, wiped his hands, and looked at his work. The window no longer groaned, no longer cracked in the wind. It reflected the sea like it belonged there. Clara leaned against the doorway. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked. Theo didn't answer right away. Then, because for once, I don't want to be the one who leaves things broken. The sea again. They walked to the bluff after dinner. No words, just the sound of tide and breath. Clara stopped by the edge and turned to him. "You're staying, aren't you?" Theo looked at her. "I'm not running, not anymore." She stepped closer. "Then stay here, not just in this town, in this." He took her face in his hands, gentle, certain. "I don't know what we're building yet," he whispered. "Neither do I, but I want to build it anyway." She nodded and kissed him like she meant it this time. Not out of longing, but knowing. Not from fear, but choice. Chapter 9, A Room of Light. The door to the studio had stayed closed for years. Clara hadn't touched it since her mother passed, not out of fear, but out of respect. Like the room had become a mausoleum of silence painted with ghosts. But that morning something shifted. She woke before dawn, lit a candle, pushed open the door, and the light poured in. Dust danced in the air. The easel stood like a sentinel, waiting. Her mother's brushes still hung from their wire rack, stiff with dried color. The scent of oil paint and lavender lingered in the corners, and on the far wall, covered with a linen cloth, sat one final canvas. The painting, she hesitated, breath caught between ribs. Then she pulled back the cloth. It was incomplete, barely a sketch. A woman at the edge of the shore, arms stretched toward the horizon. In the distance, a man in silhouette, walking away or walking home. A child's hand in the foreground, outstretched between them both. The lines were soft, blurred by time, but the emotion was unmistakable, longing, love, letting go. Scrawled in pencil at the bottom right corner, in faint letters, "If you ever return, I'll be here." Clara touched the canvas with trembling fingers. Her mother hadn't stopped hoping. Even when the letters ceased, even when silence became the loudest part of love, the studio breathes again. By mid-morning, Clara had opened the windows, wiped down the tables, hung the brushes in sunlight. She moved through the space like someone waking from a long sleep. When Theo appeared in the doorway, she didn't turn. "You cleaned it," he said softly. "I think it cleaned me." He stepped inside, reverent. She painted like she was remembering something. She was, Clara whispered. She just couldn't say it out loud. She showed him the canvas. He stared at it for a long time. "That's you," he said finally, "in the foreground." "I think so." And him, and everything between us, roots. That afternoon, Theo returned with lumber, not for repair, for something new. "You're building something?" Clara asked. "A bench, for the bluff." "Why?" "Because I need to make something that doesn't hurt to sit with." She smiled. "Can I help?" "Thought you'd never ask." They worked side by side, hands dusty, laughter unforced. And with every nail, every knot in the wood, Clara saw something change in him. Not just healing, growing. For the first time, Theo wasn't just patching the past. He was planting the future. Rain again. That night, the rain returned, gentle, soothing, like breath. Clara stood at the window in her mother's cardigan, candle lit, sketch pad in hand. She had started to draw again, not from memory, not from grief, but from the present. Theo came up behind her, his arms warm around her waist. "What are you making?" he asked. "A new story. For them? For me?" She turned. He kissed her forehead, soft and steady. "Do you believe in second chances?" he asked. "I believe in people who fight for them. And what about third chances?" She smiled. "Only if they come with tea in the morning. Deal." A letter found. Just before bed, Clara returned to the studio to blow out the candle. Something caught her eye beneath the drawer. A folded envelope yellowed at the edges. It wasn't addressed. No date. Just the handwriting she knew as well as her own, Margot. Inside, to whoever finds this, you may think I lived my whole life waiting, that I never stopped watching the sea, that I loved a man who never truly came home. And you'd be right, but what you wouldn't see is this: I loved, and I kept loving, not because he came back, but because I stayed true to the part of me that could still believe. Love doesn't always get the ending it deserves, but if you're lucky, it still leaves something behind. I hope you find it, M. Clara folded the letter slowly, then blew out the candle and left the door open behind her. Chapter 10, The Bench. The sun was low, a soft amber spilling over the cliffs as Clara and Theo carried the last plank to the bluff. The bench was almost finished, raw wood slowly shaped by calloused hands and quiet determination. Not bad for two amateurs, Theo joked, tightening a bolt. Clara smiled, brushing her hair from her face. You're the amateur, she said. I'm the guy who almost left town. Good thing you didn't. He looked out over the water. There's something about this place. It's more than just the view. They set the final plank down. The bench stood sturdy, simple, a place to rest, to remember, to start again. The visitor. A car pulled up the gravel road just as twilight deepened. Clara noticed the figure before Theo did, a woman with sharp eyes and a briefcase, standing hesitantly near the driveway. Who's that? Clara asked. Theo frowned. Not sure. Let's find out. They approached. The woman offered a business card. I'm Elise Carter. I'm here about James Ward. Clara's breath caught. What about him? I'm his granddaughter. Silence. I know this might be sudden, Elise said, but there are things you need to know. Things that might explain why he left. Clara looked at Theo. He squeezed her hand. Let's hear her out. Secrets and stories. Inside the house, Elise shared stories from her own family, tales Clara had never heard. James had been torn between two lives, duty to country and duty to family. Elise's mother was James's daughter from another woman. He tried to reach out, Elise said, but some wounds run too deep. Some bridges burn. Clara's world shifted. Why now, she asked. Because he's gone. And there are papers, letters, and a will. Things he wanted you to have? Theo opened an envelope. Inside, a letter addressed to Clara. If you're reading this, it means I never found my way home. But I hope this finds you well. I hope it helps you understand. I am sorry for the silence, for the years lost. But know this. I loved your mother. I loved you. And if love could cross time, I'm sending this with all I have. A quiet piece, Clara folded the letter carefully. She looked at Theo. I don't know what this changes. Maybe it doesn't, Theo said, but maybe it lets us stop chasing ghosts. They stepped outside. The bench waited in the fading light. Clara sat, Theo beside her. The sea whispered,